echoes of history. Fascism is not a new thing. Arguably it dates back 7,000 years. The idea of a strong leader running the government, and basically the leader is the state and the state is the leader, and everything is all about that. And your job prospects are based on the leader. Your political prospects are based on on loyalty to the leader. This is an old form of government. It's been around a long, long time. We saw it here in the United States in the old Confederacy. In the 1830s, the Confederacy, toward the late 1830s, the Confederacy was essentially taken over by about 1,000 families in the South. The large plantation owners, they were made massively richer by the invention of the cotton gin about 30 years earlier. And, they reached out to destroy democracy altogether in the United States. They declared war against the United States. There are still followers of the Confederacy in the United States who would like to declare war on the United States and bring back all the old values of the Confederacy: patriarchy, racism, basically fascism. We beat them back. We fought them off. Hundreds of thousands of us died in the process. But we ended the fascism, or we slowed down the fascism in the southern states. Now they want more. More. And that's what is so essential to fascism. We see, for example, fealty to the dear leader is all important. There's nothing of a higher priority than that. This morning, turned off MSNBC and switched to CNN, and we flip back and forth there, and we also go to watch Stephanie Miller over on. It's important for people to, even though it sounds kind of wonky to talk about the administrative. Because Morning Joe, since they went and down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss Donald Trump's ass, they no longer refer to him as a fascist. They no longer, they're not really talking about these issues. They're, hey, let's talk about sports. Let's talk about finance. Let's talk about, it's sad. It's really sad. And it's also troubling. This is how fascism takes over. It does it incrementally. In fact, the principal tool that fascists use is fear. And the principal weapon that Trump has used his entire life is fear. It's why Bob Woodward entitled his book about Trump, Fear. That's the weapon that fascists use. They always have throughout history. Terrify the opposition. Threaten them with economic ruin, threaten them with prison. Dr. Bandy Lee was fired from Yale University when she tweeted that Trump was mentally ill. School teacher Leah Kenyon was fired from her job for saying Donald Trump is a sexual predator. Julie Brisker was fired from her job with government contractor Akimov for giving Trump's motorcade the finger. Rebecca Jones was fired by Ron DeSantis for telling the truth about his covering up Florida COVID statistics. Florida's Orange County Health Director, Dr. Raul Pino, was removed for encouraging his staff to get vaccinated. DeSantis has been showing us how to do this down in Florida for a couple of years now. Disney stands up to him, he goes after Disney. Tampa Bay Rays stand up to him, he goes after the Tampa Bay Rays. Pretty soon, companies don't even bother to stand up to dear leader, including media companies. Washington Post and the LA Times both obeyed in advance. You've got, as I mentioned, Joe and Mika going down to Florida to kiss Trump's ass. Trump immediately, by the way, after they did that, Trump ran to Fox News to brag about it. He says, they congratulated me on running a great and flawless campaign, they called it, one for the history books. And they said, and then Trump says, it's too bad that Joe and Mika's ass kissing, he says, I added Joe and Mika's ass kissing, wasn't done long ago. He said, I expect this will take place with others in the media, even those who have been extremely hostile. Right. Will it? I suspect so. Expect more media stars, more network executives to do the in-person or online version of what Joe and Mika did. Sir, yes, sir. May I kiss your butt, please? Oh, what a beautiful butt you have. I mean, they think it's going to mollify Trump, but it won't. What it does is it'll strengthen him. It'll convince him that, fear is what he should be using. This is, we saw this in Florida when DeSantis signed legislation giving him the authority to hold college professors accountable. I mean, the headline over at Salon says the whole thing. Quote, DeSantis signs bill requiring Florida students and professors to register political views with the state. Universities may lose funding if staff and students' beliefs do not satisfy Florida's Republican-run legislature. I mean, you know, you end up doing things on dear leader's behalf, whether you're an elected official, in his party, working at a private corporation, or even in a nonprofit sector. And if you defy him, it's the end of your career. And the people around him speak out, you know, generally a little more loudly. This is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said of Nancy Pelosi, quote, she took an oath to protect American citizens and uphold our laws, and she gives aid and comfort to our enemies who illegally invade our land. That's what treason is, and by our law, representatives and senators can be kicked out and no longer serve in our government, and it's a crime punishable by death. So here you have Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for Nancy Pelosi to be sentenced to death, or at least strongly suggesting it. And now Trump says that he's going to use the power of the state against Jack Smith, and Jack Smith is resigning. I mean, this is fascism. I've shared with you before Milton Mayer's writings, but I think it's time to visit it again. Milton Mayer was an American Jew. He was a reporter for one of Chicago's largest newspapers. And in 1954, after World War II, he flew over to Germany and met with 10 quote, average Germans. One guy was a baker, another guy was a stonemason, another guy was a college professor. Most of these quotes are from the college professor. This is what they told Milton Mayer. This is what this good German in 1954 told Milton Mayer. Quote, this separation of government from the people, this widening of the gap, took place so gradually and so insensibly, each step disguised, perhaps not even intentionally, as a temporary emergency measure, are associated with true patriotic allegiance or real social purposes. And all the crises and reforms, including real reforms, so occupied the people that they did not see the slow motion underneath of the whole process of government growing remoter and remoter. To live in this process is absolutely not to be able to notice it. Please try to believe me, unless one has had a much greater degree of political awareness, acuity than most of us ever had the occasion to develop. Each step was so small, so inconsequential, so well explained, or on occasion regretted, that unless one were detached from the whole process from the beginning, unless one understood what the whole thing was in principle, what all these little measures that no patriotic German could resent must someday lead to, one no more saw it developing from day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing. And one day it is over his head. Is it possible that this is happening in America, all these small steps leading to a dictatorial form of government? Mayer's professor gives the answer to that. He says, you see, one doesn't see exactly where or how to move. Believe me, this is true. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for the one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join you in resisting somehow. You don't want to act or even to talk alone. You don't want to go out of your way to make trouble. Why not? Well, you're not in the habit of doing it. And it's not just fear of standing alone that restrains you. It's also genuine uncertainty. You'll recall back in 2017, the first year of the Trump presidency, former President Obama came right out and said it. He said, you have to tend to this garden of democracy, otherwise things can fall apart fairly quickly. And we've seen societies where that happens. Now, presumably, President Obama said, there was a ballroom in Vienna in the late 1920s or 30s that looked and seemed as if, filled with music and art and literature and the science that was emerging, would continue into perpetuity. And then, President Obama said, 60 million people died, and the entire world was plunged into chaos. So how does it happen? Does the leader declare, hey, America is now officially fascist? Well, not so much. This is what Milton Mayer's German friend told him in 1954. He said, of course, this isn't the way it happens. In between come all the hundreds of little steps, some of them imperceptible, each of them preparing you not to be shocked by the next. Step C is not so much worse than step B, and if you didn't take a stand at step B, why would you at step C, and so on to step D? And one day, too late, your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. The burden of self-deception has grown too heavy. and some minor incident. In my case, it was my little boy, hardly more than a baby, saying Jew, swine, collapses it all at once. And you see that everything has changed, and changed completely under your nose. The world you live in, your nation, your people, it's not the world you were in at all. The forms are all there, all untouched, all reassuring, the houses, the shops, the jobs, the mealtimes, the visits, the concerts, the cinema, the holidays. But the spirit, which you never noticed because you made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms, is changed. Now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed. Now you live in a system which rules without responsibility, even to God. And here we are. Mike Johnson is talking about a procedure. I'm going to talk about it in more detail in a little bit, that could allow Trump to put through his cabinet nominations without even Senate hearings, without any discussion at all. The little steps, step by step by step, that lead to basically the end of what we call democracy. We're there. We're on the edge of this thing. We can't pretend we don't know where what's happening or where it will lead. And now that we know, we can't escape the moral obligation to resist with everything we have. I'll be right back.